There comes a time when you realize life isn't shaped by big moments, but by the quiet habits you repeat every day, the small choices, the hidden patterns, the decisions no one sees but you. Backed by psychology and grounded in real human behavior, this video is a journey into 10 powerful habits that can reshape your identity, rebuild your confidence, and redirect your entire life. If you're ready to meet the stronger version of yourself, let's begin. Chapter 1. The moment everything changes. There comes a moment in every person's life when something deep inside whispers that the path they're walking no longer reflects the person they want to become. It doesn't always arrive with fireworks or dramatic turning points. Sometimes it shows up quietly, after a long day, when you finally stop moving long enough to hear your own thoughts. And in that pause, there's a subtle ache, the realization that life is asking for more from you than the habits you've been living on. This moment of awakening isn't loud, but it's powerful. It's the instant you sense that you've been running on autopilot, following patterns that were built long ago, reacting instead of choosing, drifting instead of directing. And suddenly, in that honest breath, you understand that you're standing at a crossroads: stay who you've been, or step toward who you're meant to be. Change rarely begins with a grand gesture. Transformations are built through small decisions, quiet promises, and the courage to look at your own life without turning away. It's the recognition that your habits, the things you repeat when the world isn't watching, are the invisible architecture of your future. They shape your identity long before you notice it. They influence your confidence, your mindset, your destiny. And here's the truth that shakes your soul awake: you don't transform when the world demands it, you transform when you decide it's time. Every person reaches this threshold eventually, that inner shift where you're no longer satisfied with old excuses, old fears, old stories. You feel a pull, an urge, a quiet uprising inside you. A desire to grow. To rise. To become someone you can respect. This is the beginning. Not the dramatic part people talk about. Not the part you post online. But the real beginning, the internal decision that you deserve a life that feels intentional, meaningful, and aligned with your highest self. This first chapter is not about action. It's about awareness. Awareness that your life is shaped from the inside out, through the thoughts you allow, the patterns you follow, and the choices you make every single day. And as you stand at this internal crossroads, there is one truth that matters more than anything else: your next chapter of life will not be written by luck, or timing, or circumstance. It will be written by habits, the small, consistent, invisible decisions that build your character when no one is watching. This is the moment everything changes. Not because the world shifts, but because you do. Chapter 2. The battle within, mastering your inner voice. Every transformation begins in the quiet corners of the mind, long before the world sees any progress. Inside each of us exists a private narrator, a voice that comments on our efforts, questions our choices, and shapes our confidence. Most people think their inner voice simply describes reality. In truth, it creates it. Imagine waking up each morning with a whisper that says, "You're already behind. You're not ready. Don't even try." That voice doesn't just influence your feelings, it writes the script for your entire day. It makes you hold back when you should step forward. It convinces you that discomfort means danger, instead of growth. It becomes the silent architect of a small life. But there's another voice inside you, softer, calmer, wiser. A voice that doesn't dismiss your fears but guides you through them. A voice that speaks like a mentor, pushing you forward instead of pulling you back. When this voice says, "This is difficult, but you can handle it," something inside shifts. The world feels less threatening. Challenges feel manageable. You feel capable. The difference between these two voices shapes two very different futures. One voice makes you shrink. The other helps you rise. The truth is, no one escapes doubt. No one wakes up perfectly confident. Confidence isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to speak to yourself in a way that strengthens you instead of breaking you. When you begin to master your inner dialogue, your entire identity starts to shift. You stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop insulting your potential. You stop predicting failure before you even begin. you start treating yourself like someone worth fighting for. This is the first real battle of transformation, not the world outside, but the world inside your own mind. Learning to guide your inner voice is not about fake positivity. It's about seeing reality without surrendering to old, damaging narratives. It's about replacing self-doubt with self-coaching. It's about choosing the tone that aligns with the future you're trying to build. Because your mind listens to everything you say, especially the things you repeat. When you master your inner voice, you begin unlocking a version of yourself that's been waiting patiently beneath the noise, a version filled with potential, courage, and clarity. This is where transformation truly begins, with the voice you choose to believe. Chapter 3: Choosing Discomfort. The quiet path to real courage. Growth never hides in comfort. It waits beyond the edge of what feels easy, safe, and familiar. Yet most people spend their whole lives convincing themselves they need more preparation, more time, more confidence before they take the first step. They wait, and waiting quietly becomes a habit. The truth is, confidence doesn't arrive before action. Confidence is built through action, especially the uncomfortable kind. Every dream you've ever had will eventually lead you to a doorway marked fear. And you must walk through it. Not because you feel ready, but because walking through fear is the only way to outgrow the version of you that keeps hesitating. Picture the moments when you've wanted something deeply, to start a project, change your life, speak up, share your work, but a wave of discomfort rose inside you. That tension in your chest. That voice saying, "Not today." That subtle pull towards safety. Most people treat this discomfort as a stop sign. But discomfort is not a stop sign. It is an invitation. It is the signal that you are standing at the edge of becoming someone stronger. Real courage isn't dramatic or heroic. It's quiet. It's personal. It's the decision to take one small uncomfortable step even while fear sits heavy in your stomach. The people who grow aren't the ones who feel less fear, they're the ones who move anyway. Imagine adopting a simple habit, doing one uncomfortable thing on purpose, every single day. A message you're afraid to send. A task you've been avoiding. A risk that feels tiny but terrifying. Each small step sends a signal to your brain, I am capable of more than I think. This is exposure, a psychological principle, a stoic practice, a path to courage. And the more you step into discomfort, the more familiar it becomes. The door marked fear stops looking like a threat and starts looking like an opportunity. The truth is, growth is uncomfortable by design. You're not supposed to feel ready. You're supposed to feel stretched. That's what expansion feels like. Every time you choose discomfort over avoidance, you cast a quiet vote for a stronger, braver, more capable version of yourself. And eventually, those votes accumulate into identity. Courage is not something you wait for. It's something you practice. One uncomfortable step at a time. Chapter 4: Guarding Your Attention. The power of a focused mind. In a world overflowing with noise, distraction has become the silent enemy of purpose. You don't lose your dreams in a single dramatic moment, you lose them slowly, in tiny fragments of attention stolen throughout the day. A few minutes of scrolling here, a few notifications there, and before you realize it, your mind has been pulled in 100 directions, leaving your focus scattered and your energy drained. Attention is your most valuable currency. Where it goes, your life follows. Every morning, your mind wakes up like a blank canvas. But for most people, the very first thing they do is hand that canvas to the world. They open their phone, and within seconds, their mind is filled with other people's opinions, achievements, problems, highlights, and noise. Their brain becomes a crowded room before they've even taken a breath for themselves. A distracted mind cannot build a meaningful life. Not because you lack intelligence, but because you lack space. Now picture a different kind of morning. One where you wake up and give yourself a moment before the world intrudes. A moment of quiet. A moment to choose your direction instead of being dragged into someone else's. You write down the 3 things that matter. You keep your phone at a distance. You protect the first hour of your day like sacred ground. Suddenly, something remarkable happens, your thoughts become clearer. Your decisions feel intentional. Your day gains a direction instead of drifting into autopilot. Focus is not a talent, it's a discipline. It's the simple, powerful habit of deciding what deserves your mind and what doesn't. The truth is, every distraction has a cost. Every time you switch tasks, your mind pays a price. Every lost minute of focus becomes a lost opportunity for depth, creativity, and progress. But when you guard your attention with care, your mind becomes a sharper tool. You work deeper. You think clearer. You feel calmer. You make progress where others stay stuck. A focused life is not busier, it's quieter. Not slower, just more intentional. Not limited, but directed. When you choose what to focus on, you are choosing the person you become. Your attention is your power. Guard it fiercely. Chapter 5, Emotional Mastery, the strength hidden in the pause every day. Life tests you, not with grand challenges, but with subtle emotional triggers that shape who you become. A careless comment. A sudden change of plans. A moment of insecurity. Most people react instantly, letting emotions take control before their mind even catches up. And without realizing it, those reactions begin to shape their identity. But emotional strength isn't about feeling less. It's about responding with intention. Picture a person who reacts immediately the moment anger rises. They snap, argue, or shut down. When fear appears, they avoid the situation. When insecurity hits, they retreat. These reactions don't make them weak, they simply haven't yet learned the power of the pause. Now imagine someone who feels the same emotions just as intensely, but instead of reacting, they take a breath. A small, deliberate breath. In that tiny pause, they create space, enough space to see the situation clearly instead of through the fog of emotion. The pause is where emotional mastery begins. It is the quiet moment where you step out of impulse and into awareness. You can't control what you feel. You can control what you do next. And that single truth is one of the most freeing realizations you will ever have. When anger rises, the pause allows you to respond instead of explode. When fear shows up, it gives you the courage to move forward anyway. When insecurity whispers, it gives you the power to question it instead of obey it. People often think emotional control means suppressing feelings, pretending they don't exist. But true emotional regulation is the opposite. It's acknowledging your emotions without letting them dictate your behavior. It's like standing in a storm without being blown away. Over time, this habit becomes strength. People start seeing you as grounded, calm, capable of handling pressure. But more importantly, you begin to trust yourself. You stop regretting your reactions. You stop apologizing for outbursts. You stop being controlled by momentary emotions. Emotional mastery gives you clarity in moments where others fall apart. It gives you power in situations where others feel powerless. It gives you freedom from the old patterns that used to hold your life hostage. The pause is small, but the strength it builds is enormous. This is the habit that turns chaos into clarity and reactions into choices. Chapter 6, The Search Within, Understanding the Why Behind Your Life. Most people move through life chasing goals that were handed to them, not chosen by them. They run after achievements they think they're supposed to want, the career, the lifestyle, the milestones, only to discover that reaching them often feels strangely empty. Not because the goals were wrong, but because the motives were never examined. A life that looks successful on the outside can feel hollow on the inside when the why is missing. Understanding your motives is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the compass that keeps you from living someone else's script. Think about how many decisions in your life were made from fear, fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of disappointing others. Or how many goals were chosen from comparison, wanting what someone else has because it seems like proof of worth. When your motives are unclear, you become a stranger to your own life. You walk fast, but without direction. You achieve more, but feel less fulfilled. You keep moving, but never feel like you're arriving anywhere meaningful. Now imagine pausing before committing to a dream, a job, a relationship, or even a habit, and asking yourself simple but powerful questions. Why do I want this? Who am I trying to prove something to? Is this desire authentic or inherited? Is this coming from inspiration or insecurity? These questions don't slow your life, they align it. Because once you understand the real motive behind your actions, clarity appears. You no longer chase achievements for validation. You no longer pursue goals that drain you. You no longer live by expectations that were never yours to carry. When your motives are clean, your decisions become lighter. When your motives are honest, your path becomes clearer. When your motives are authentic, your success becomes meaningful. This kind of self-reflection is uncomfortable, not because the answers hurt, but because honesty demands courage. But this courage is what separates a life of intention from a life of automatic repetition. The moment you begin understanding your motives, you reclaim your freedom. You stop living reactively and start living deliberately. You stop drifting and start choosing. And slowly, you begin shaping a life that feels aligned with who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. Chapter 7, The Patience That Builds a Future. There is a quiet moment we all encounter sooner or later, the moment we realize that life isn't shaped by what feels good right now, but by what will matter years from now. It's astonishing how easily people trade their future for a moment of comfort, how effortlessly the present tempts us, how silently the long-term slips away when the short-term sparkles brighter. Yet behind every fulfilled life, behind every meaningful journey, behind every strong and steady person you admire, you will always find the same subtle power, the habit of delaying gratification. Think of a man like Adarsh. He doesn't wake up wanting chaos, he simply chooses comfort one small moment at a time. When he feels stressed, he buys something to soothe the feeling. When he feels bored, he reaches for instant entertainment. When a task feels difficult, he postpones it because comfort whispers, later. Each choice feels harmless, gentle, almost reasonable. But stitched together day after day, these choices begin to form a quiet trap. His days feel easy, but his life becomes harder. The future he dreams of starts shrinking, not because he's incapable, but because he keeps handing away small pieces of it to the present moment. And then imagine someone like Tara. She feels the same temptations, the same pull toward instant pleasure, the same desire to escape discomfort. But Tara knows something Adarsh hasn't discovered: the future arrives whether you prepare for it or not. And so she practices waiting. She saves money instead of spending it to get a brief hit of excitement. She works on her skills even when it feels repetitive. She chooses the meal that nourishes her instead of the one that rewards her mood for 5 minutes. She invests in the version of herself who will wake up next year, 5 years, 10 years from now, and she does it not because she enjoys discipline, but because she respects her future self. Every time Tara chooses patience over impulse, she sends her brain a powerful message: you matter more than this moment. And slowly, almost invisibly, her future becomes richer, calmer, stronger. Her life gains a stability Adarsh never touches, not because she's luckier, not because she's more talented, but because she builds her tomorrow while he escapes from today. Psychologists call this delayed gratification. But in real life, it's much simpler. It is the courage to wait. The strength to resist easy rewards. The maturity to choose meaning over mood. It is the understanding that the most beautiful things in life, health, mastery, financial freedom, emotional peace, meaningful relationships, all require patience, small sacrifices, and tiny acts of commitment repeated quietly over time. When you master this habit, you begin to feel something shift inside you. You become someone who no longer chases quick dopamine, someone who no longer uses comfort as an escape, someone who can endure the boredom of consistency and the discomfort of growth. And in that shift, something remarkable awakens: a sense of pride, a sense of direction, a sense of control over your own story. Because people think discipline is about restriction, but it's not. Discipline is an act of self-love. A promise to your future. A declaration that your long-term happiness is worth more than short-term relief. And when you begin choosing your future self over your present impulse, you begin shaping a life that feels earned, grounded, and deeply fulfilling. Adarsh shows us what happens when you let every feeling decide your choices. Tara shows us what happens when you let your future guide your actions. And life, in its own quiet way, always rewards the Taras of the world, not instantly, but inevitably. This is the chapter where you stop rushing for comfort and begin building for longevity. This is where you begin honoring the person you are becoming, not just the person you are right now. The long-term version of you is waiting. Every patient choice is a step toward them. Chapter 8, The Quiet Power of Solitude. There comes a moment in every journey where the noise of the world becomes so loud, so constant, so relentless that you forget what your own voice sounds like. Modern life moves fast, louder than ever, pulling your attention in 100 directions. And without noticing, you begin drifting, reacting, absorbing, losing yourself in the whirlwind. That's the strange irony of our time. We are endlessly connected, yet deeply disconnected from ourselves. Solitude is the antidote. Picture someone like Kavya. Her life is full: friends, messages, music, endless scrolling, conversations that never end. Every quiet moment feels uncomfortable, almost threatening, so she fills it with noise. Not because she has nothing to think about, but because silence forces her to face the thoughts she's been avoiding. The world becomes her escape, her distraction, her shield. But slowly, without meaning to, she loses clarity. Her decisions feel foggy. Her emotions feel tangled. Her direction feels uncertain. She's moving constantly but going nowhere. Now imagine someone like Oriv. He lives in the same world, surrounded by the same noise. But he carves out a small pocket of silence each day, 10 minutes, maybe less. He sits alone without music, without screens, without stimulation. At first, the silence feels strange, almost heavy. But then something remarkable happens. He begins to hear his own thoughts again. He begins to notice the emotions beneath the surface. He begins reconnecting with the part of himself that the world can't touch. And slowly, this tiny ritual becomes his anchor. In that solitude, he asks himself questions most people never stop long enough to consider. Am I living in alignment with what I value? Am I moving toward my future or running from my fears? Am I choosing my path or drifting into one out of habit? Through the quiet, clarity begins to bloom, not in dramatic realizations, but through gentle truths rising to the surface. Truths you can only hear when the world finally becomes quiet. Solitude is not loneliness. Loneliness is the pain of being disconnected from others. Solitude is the power of being reconnected with yourself. It is the space where self-awareness grows, where direction strengthens, where emotional knots untangle. It is where you get honest, truly, deeply honest, about what you want and what you need to change. People often think they need motivation, but motivation comes from alignment. And alignment comes from reflection. Oriv walks through life with a quiet confidence, not because his life is easier, but because he has met himself in those silent minutes. He knows what he stands for. He knows what matters. He knows what must be released and what must be pursued. Silence didn't weaken him, it sharpened him. Meanwhile, Kavya keeps running from silence, and silence keeps following her. Her life remains full but not fulfilling, busy but not meaningful. The price of avoiding solitude is always clarity, and without clarity, life feels like a blur. The world will always try to occupy your mind. But solitude gives it back to you. 10 minutes a day is enough to shift the entire trajectory of your life. 10 minutes to breathe. To feel. To reflect. To realign. To ask yourself the questions the world won't ask for you. This is the space where transformation begins quietly, gently, powerfully, in the stillness you create on purpose. Oriv shows us that you don't need hours to find yourself. You need intention. You need silence. You need the courage to be alone long enough to hear the truth. And truth, once heard, has a way of changing everything. Chapter 9, Becoming Someone You Can Trust. There is a quiet agreement every person makes with themselves, often without realizing it, a promise that says, when I say I will do something, I will follow through. Some people treat this promise casually, breaking it over and over until the words they speak lose their weight. Others protect this promise fiercely, understanding that self-respect is built not from what you dream of doing, but from what you consistently do. This is the habit that turns goals into identity, doing what you said you would do. Imagine someone like Varun. He has big dreams, powerful ambitions, and endless ideas. He writes them down. He plans them meticulously. He tells himself tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow arrives, and the alarm rings, and he snoozes it again. The project he wants to start remains untouched. The routines he wants to build stay on paper. Each time he breaks a commitment to himself, something subtle but significant happens. His brain learns not to take his own words seriously. He begins to doubt his discipline, his abilities, and eventually, his identity. Not because he lacks potential, but because he has taught himself not to trust his own promises. Then picture someone like Meera. She's not perfect, not superhuman. She doesn't commit to everything, she chooses carefully. But once she makes a promise to herself, she treats it like a contract. Even on days when motivation fades, she shows up. Even when discomfort rises, she takes one small step. Even when progress feels slow, she stays consistent. And this consistency creates something more valuable than accomplishment. It builds self-trust. She begins to believe in her own strength, not because she's fearless, but because she has evidence, proof that she can rely on herself. Over time, this self-trust becomes her anchor. When challenges appear, she doesn't panic the way Varun does, because she knows she will show up. When opportunities arise, she doesn't hesitate, because she has practiced taking action. Her confidence is not loud or dramatic, it is quiet and earned. It grows through repetition, through doing small things she said she would do until the truth becomes undeniable. She can count on herself. Discipline isn't about being strict. It's not about pushing yourself relentlessly. It's about forming an identity where your word means something. Every action becomes a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Every promise kept becomes a foundation stone for self-respect. And every promise broken chips away at that foundation, leaving cracks where doubt seeps in. People think they need motivation to begin. But motivation is unreliable, it rises and falls like weather. Trust, on the other hand, is built. When you do what you said you would do, even in the smallest way, you create inner stability. You form a relationship with yourself based on reliability rather than excuses. This is why Meera keeps rising. She doesn't rely on good days to make progress. She builds progress through consistency, through repetition, through the discipline of honoring her own word. And because she does, her identity grows stronger. She becomes someone who believes in herself because she has given herself reasons to. Meanwhile, Varun keeps drifting. He wants a meaningful life, but he never strengthens the muscle that builds one. He wants to trust himself, but trust is earned, not imagined. His potential is real, but without action, potential stays trapped inside, never finding its way into reality. The difference between them is not talent. It's not luck. It's not intelligence. It's integrity, the integrity of following through, one decision at a time. If you want a life that feels strong, steady, and empowered, begin building trust with yourself. Start with one small promise you will keep today. Not 10 promises. Not grand declarations. Just one honest commitment. Keep it. Let that one promise become evidence. Let that evidence become confidence. Let that confidence become identity. And then something incredible happens. The person you once doubted becomes the person you can depend on. You stop hoping you'll change and begin proving it. You stop imagining the future you want and begin building it. You stop breaking promises to yourself and begin becoming someone whose word carries weight. This is how discipline becomes destiny. This is how identity is rewritten. This is how self-respect is earned. In the end, the strongest version of you is not the one who dreams the most, it is the one who keeps their word the most. Chapter 10. The freedom of full responsibility. There is a turning point in every person's life, a moment when the old excuses no longer feel convincing, when blame begins to sound hollow, and when you finally realize something quietly profound, your life only changes when you take ownership of it. Responsibility isn't about guilt or burden, it's about power. The moment you stop pointing outward and start looking inward, everything begins to shift. Imagine someone like Kunal. He drifts through life carrying the heaviness of disappointment but never the clarity of responsibility. If he doesn't get a promotion, it's because his boss is unfair. If his business idea fails, it's because the market wasn't ready. If relationships crumble, it's always because of what others did wrong. It's never him. He builds a life where every failure has a villain, every struggle has an external cause, and every setback becomes proof that the world is against him. And yet, there is a tragic truth hidden inside his thinking. By giving responsibility to everything outside himself, he gives power to everything outside himself too. He becomes a passenger in his own life, watching from the backseat while circumstances steer the wheel. Now picture someone like Sana. Her life isn't easier than Kunal's. She faces challenges, setbacks, and unfair situations just like anyone else. But she practices a different habit, one that rewrites her entire story. When something goes wrong, she doesn't rush to blame the world. She takes a breath and asks herself the questions that turn pain into wisdom. What part of this can I control? What can I learn from this moment? What can I do differently next time? She acknowledges the unfairness around her, but she refuses to let that unfairness define her path. By taking responsibility, she takes back control. She becomes the author of her own narrative, not the victim inside someone else's. Over time, this habit becomes her armor and her compass. She grows stronger not because her challenges disappear, but because she stops waiting for them to. She changes what she can, adapts to what she can't, and walks forward even when life is unkind. And with every step, her confidence grows, not the loud confidence built on ego, but the quiet confidence built on agency. The belief that no matter what happens, she can influence the direction of her life. This is the freedom of responsibility. It transforms setbacks into lessons, failures into feedback, and obstacles into opportunities for growth. It shifts your mindset from "why is this happening to me" to "what can I do with this?" And that single shift is the difference between a life that happens to you and a life you actively shape. People often misunderstand responsibility. They think it means blaming themselves for everything. But true responsibility isn't about blame, it's about choice. It's about recognizing that while the world may not always be fair, your response is always your own. And your response is where your power lies. Kunal keeps waiting for his life to change. Sana changes herself, and her life follows. One lives in a story written by circumstances. The other writes the story herself. And when you look closely, you begin to see the real truth. Responsibility is the birthplace of transformation. It is the moment you stop giving your power away. It is the moment you stop waiting for perfect conditions. It is the moment you stand up internally and decide, this is my life. I shape it. I build it. I own it. When you reach that realization, something inside shifts permanently. You stop drifting. You stop blaming. You stop waiting. You begin acting with intention. You begin walking with purpose. You begin building a future that reflects your choices rather than your fears. And that is how a life transforms, through the courage to take responsibility for your story. The final chapter is not an ending. It is an invitation. A reminder that the strongest version of you is already within you, waiting to rise the moment you stop giving your power away and start reclaiming it, one decision at a time. Thank you for spending your time with this story. I hope it brought you a little peace, a little knowledge, or maybe a moment to breathe. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please remember to subscribe Literary Listening channel. It truly helps the channel grow and brings more stories to life. Your support means more than you know. Take care, stay curious.